To paint a pine in snow, what I did was I drew two vertical lines, and then I also put Misket on to where the imaginary snow would be, as you can see on here. And then I started to paint with green, blue, brown, and start making some twigs that would come off, branches that would come off of the main structure of the trunk, and excuse me, and keeping a wet color on the paper, not dry, but more than wet, so that all of these colors would blend together. And you can paint right on top of the Misket, because you know that that's going to not adhere to the paper, because the Misket is protecting the paper with the big puffs of snow that will be on the boughs of the pine tree. This is sort of an experimental way of painting when you don't know really what you're going to get at the time, but you keep putting in some little darker values of brown within the tree trunk, and look for, so you don't have too much of a repetition. Just branches here that could be sticking out of the snow and not even connected to the trunk of the tree. As you can see here, I'm just trying to get enough lights and darks and color through the trunk so that it won't look too boring. Now the next step was to put in cobalt blue. Remember now, this is all experimental. I haven't done this before, so I might have do it different if I did it again. But in this case, I'm putting this cobalt blue where I think the snow would be, and sometimes it goes right on top of the Misket, and of course that's rubbed off later. So what I'm doing now is just looking carefully at where I can distribute this blue color of snow. And then of course I want to get that soft line between the bottom of the trunk and the snow, so I put it in while it's still wet, and then put the blue, kind of a shadow for the snow. I wish I would have made it darker at this time, but I will correct that later and through the painting process. Because I didn't do a value sketch on this, I'm really making up all of the values as I go, as I see what I think they need. Now you must dry the paper and dab it with a Kleenex so that you don't have any moisture left, because you're going to rub off the snow. And when you rub off the Misket, rather, then that will bleed. Okay, now before I rubbed off the Misket, I thought I would do a background color and go right in through the tree. Now I know that some of it is going to bleed, which added to the mystery of the pine. And of course this was not planned, but it sure did work out very well. As I have this different distant hill coming in here with a purple on top, and then I go with yellow ochre on the bottom, and then I just thin it out as I come down. And then I want to put in some pine trees way in the background, way up on that hill. Maybe a little too dark for that right now, but we'll just leave it. I didn't even think of doing this as a painting. It was just kind of an exercise, and it turned out to be very interesting. Okay, so now after I'm done with that, I'll put in a little bit more color down below, and I want to make sure that the value behind the Misket is dark enough. It's dark enough so that the white will show of the snow, but you don't want to have it real dark either. So now I've got to go in with the sky, which I'm taking neutral tint. Neutral tint, as you can see, I'm mixing up there, and I'm putting it in as a gray sky, and I'm going right over the tree, because I know there's Misket up there, and I want that to be nice and white. And so then I just keep applying this color, and as I go over to the left, I imagine that's where the light is coming from, and so I want it lighter. Now in this particular phase, I was thinking that those could be clouds, so I darkened around that just a little bit. Later, though, I've changed my mind, and I did something different with the sky. And then down below, I lift some of the water up so that it doesn't drip all the way down. Now you want to dry the paper before removing the misket, and that's really important. In this exercise, maybe you should wait 12 hours before you do these steps. But in this case, I dried it real good, then I dabbed it with a Kleenex and make sure there wasn't any dry drops on there, the wet drops rather. And now I'm removing the misket. And as you see, these are just blobs. They're not related to the tree at all, but they reserve the white. And they have different sizes of shapes. And of course it gets wider as it goes down the tree and smaller as it goes up, except for that one big one up there, which I will paint out. Some of it will paint it out. Now the first thing that I did was I took my cobalt blue and I put it on, just imagining where the shadow would be, and I'm doing it kind of lightly because I don't know exactly how I'm going to link all these snow shapes together. And of course that's what the shadow does, it links things. And so it's going to link all of these together, and it's going to come up right up in there. And then there's a little bit up that way, and then there's a deep shadow right inside there, which I think that should be a deep shadow going into the tree. And then I'll come down, and you can kind of see how I'm just gingerly looking at it, squinting at it, and seeing what type of a pattern I'm creating. I usually like to leave the top part of the snow lighter, because that's reflecting the sky, and the side of the snow is not, and so it should be a little bit darker. Okay, so that's basically, it's really a simple operation, but a lot of fun, as I said before. Now I'm taking the brush and I'm going to soften some of those edges just with a damp brush. And we'll see where we go from here. Developing this tree is a slow process. It's most of the painting process, basically, and so that's what I'm doing now. Is it doesn't move as quick visually, but these are the steps that I thought of using, and putting a little bit of snow on top of a branch that's coming out, and that got just to be a little too dark, and so I put a little water in with it and bringing it up into that type of value. And you can see on my the palette there is the third one in is ultramarine blue, and so this is some ultramarine blue that I'm putting in a mixture with cobalt, and you can get a darker blue that way. And you can see now I'm starting to get some form, and I'm moving it around and seeing what's going to happen. Now it's time to dry it, thoroughly, so that you can go in on a dry paper and start putting in some darks, and using I think it's number 7 brush, I'm putting in the twigs that are a little bit darker, and here I'm starting to work on that shape that was too much of a blob, and I'm going in and getting some pine needles and branches and so forth that would be inside of that. And so now it looks a little awkward, but when you put the next one in and start bringing it down, it starts to take shape. There's that deep crevice that's got snow inside of the tree. You can't see the trunk of it, and that's important that you show some of the trunk, but some you don't. so it's hidden. And this taking some branch and going right on top of the white and putting in a branch that's on top of the snow. Many different ways. And I'm going to go in there and I'm going to start to form these snow patches that I could not see when I painted. And so now I can form them by the negative space painting. And where I just keep pushing it and pushing it. Crisscrossing some of the branches, and you can see some of the blurriness that happened in putting the background now has sort of helped in the mysteriousness of the tree. And the trunk of the tree is not totally all dark. It's got different values with inside of the trunk, and I think that's important. Now there are trees, and I left those white spaces, and I have no idea why. And I looked at them and I thought to myself, my goodness, they could be little pine trees. And so I start putting my darks in first and leaving the white part of it as the snow. And then I start changing colors, which I put a brown in along with the green, and sort of started to imagine what they would be like. These are the tops of the pine trees. They're down in a valley type of thing. And I'm just sort of sketchily finding my way, putting in some brown right in that area there. And I like the way the darks are carried over to the tree, so that's rather interesting. We have another one right here. Now this is a little bit of lower tree because it's going down, I imagine, and it's just not, things that are straight across is not as interesting as things that are different levels. And so what I'm doing now, and I'm going to put one right next to the tree that's got the snow on it right there, so then you'll be able to see the snow-covered bough. After I got done with that, I darkened the foreground, and I wanted that to be darker. And then I used that dark blue, and I put it into the tree itself. Trees were dry, by the way; they were not wet. And now you can see where I took the white away, and now the star of the painting is the tree. Now I took a sponge and I sponged out the clouds in the sky, and I made one big area, and then I put yellow ochre in the round fashion, and then also I put in cerulean blue, ultramarine blue, and a little bit of neutral tint, because I wanted this to be as gray as possible. I don't want any color in it except for the filtered sun. I saw this as I was driving down one day after I started this painting, and so I decided that I would do that type of sky. Now this is dry right now, and I want it to be just a little bit brighter, because that's what I saw was a little bit brighter. So I decided that I would take my sponge and I would, this Mr. Clean It, you can buy it in the grocery store, you can rub out right inside of the circle, the sun, and it'll take some of the paint away and start to have some light to it. And so now that's exactly what I was after. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. It was a made-up painting, totally, and I think it turned out really pretty good. Thank you.